Hello and welcome to a Central Podcast, a little coffee, and a whole lot of Jesus.
Yeah,
I came in too early.
That's okay. It's okay. You were excited about getting in this podcast moment, right?
Excited.
So excited. All right, so I'm Pastor Michael. You may know that by now. I don't know. To my left is Pastor David Brown. My right is my wife, Pastor Annette. And to my far right is Pastor Chester.
Yeah, well, I'm last. Though.
So when someone says pastor in the room, I'll go, huh? Everyone gets to be recognized.
Yeah, the last shall be first.
Anyway,
right.
This is good stuff. Talking about our Central Podcast.
You good, Pastor David?
David's lost it over here. He's still laughing about stuff. I wish he was this funny on camera is the thing. That's the part that gets me. So last Sunday, we preached a message, or I preached a message entitled Don't Forget the Fragments.
Or a Sunday ago.
No,
or some Sunday.
It's the next one.
It's the next one. All right, good to know. We're that close right now, right?
Yeah.
All right, so, and I think what I want to do is see what you guys think about. We'll start off with John chapter 6 and verse 9. Are you going to go with us, do you think? All right. I don't think you'll make it. All right, so the disciples and Jesus are at a place where he is teaching, right? And so he's been teaching for a while, apparently longer than I preached on Sunday. I'm just going to point this out because everybody now is really hungry. And so for those of you thinking I preached a long time, this sermon went on for quite a while. So, and they have nothing there to feed the people with. Right. So the question is, what do we do? How are we going to feed them? We've got one kid here with some 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread, and he makes the people sit down. The miracle of it all is hard to fathom. He blesses it and breaks it. And every time he sends a basket out, more food comes out, more food comes out. Every person is affected dramatically, and they all eat till they're full. Then they collect 12 baskets left over. 12 baskets of food was the leftovers of a meal that fed over 5,000 people. That's just hard to fathom. 1 basket for each disciple. That was the whole point of the title, Don't Forget the Fragments, meaning don't forget the things that God has done in your life. Don't forget the moments where he did the miracles, and you have those mementos, those reminders of those moments, and that you can remember that in the time you're now, he can do something powerful. So thinking about that, do you guys have fragments that you can recall, that you can pull out of your mind, that you can pull out of your spirit and say, I had a moment when this took place and this took place. Didn't know how this would happen. And yet God did something because I remembered what he did.
Well, just like you were talking about Sunday about car wrecks. Yeah. That was me.
Yeah, know? Okay.
And I kept the scar on my face right here.
Mm-hmm.
It happened when I was 18. Got in a car wreck. I was, for lack of words, doing the wrong things. Got out of my dad. I'm doing what I want,
Yeah.
And then I got
adulting.
Yeah.
Dumb
adulting.
Dumb adulting.
Yeah.
It happens.
But the car wreck, it changed my perspective on life. And it helps me to stay grateful. They offered to do plastic surgery for my face.
Wow.
And this was bad. It healed, I'm 38 now. So it healed up pretty good. But this was as white as y'all.
Oh, wow.
On me.
Wow.
And it was just scattered. It was like scars just everywhere. And then my scar right here goes all the way in the middle of my forehead. This was split open. When you see movies when your head gets split open and then just split, it's not like that. Everything swells up. So it was like this big old fat piece of meat just hanging on my head.
Wow, Lord, man.
But it changed me, and it helps me to stay grateful because I told him, I said, I don't want plastic surgery. I want to keep this so I won't go back to what I was.
Woo.
So anytime something happened in my life, I look in the mirror and say, could be worse. Could be dead. So the doctor said I should have been dead. He said all this should have been shattered because I hit straight on with the windshield.
Mm.
That's a I know we're laughing a little bit here. You're talking about describing it. I mean, this fragments of meat right there. It's all full up. How long did you have the look of that? How long did it look that way?
Probably at least a year or so. I was in college and it still was showing. And people will look at it like, and I keep my hair cut low. So some people come to me and say, hey, your part kind of crooked. I said, it's a scar. And then like, oh, then I get to talk about it.
Gotcha.
That's what I used to do. Then,
Well, see, I think that's amazing because there's a moment in this. Well, I believe that the baskets, each disciple took that basket of leftovers. They each had a moment to remember, and they had supply because Jesus left them. He went up to the mountaintop to pray. But to think that you're collection of fragments is something that can be seen every day you look in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I love that you brought that up because I'm a firm believer that scars are just proof that he still heals.
Yeah.
You know, he's done it before and he'll do it again. And so I love the perspective of looking at that and going, it could have been worse. And he still has a plan because I'm still here. The scar is healed. And so he's got a purpose for it.
Right.
Well, I'm just going to state the obvious. When was the last time you heard an 18-year-old say something of that level? Do not cover this up. I want to remember to never behave this way again.
My mom looked at me like I was crazy. Like, they're going to pay for it. You know? I think they were going to take it from my butt.
Yeah.
Well,
And cover it up.
I don't know. Son, I just
had four bad nicknames to give you.
I know. We all just shut down there. Did you feel that?
Well, that's what they said. Yeah, that's what they said. Yeah. It's just, I don't know, just something going to stay with me. And
wow.
Yeah.
Dude, that's just, I didn't realize. I mean, I know I've heard the story before, but here, I didn't know the other details, but that's still pretty impressive. And so, yeah, so that's 20 years ago. Is that right?
Oh, doggone, yeah.
Yeah, it's anniversary time. Is that what it is? 20-year anniversary of that moment in your life?
Yeah.
Now, speaking of scars, David Brown, how you doing, sir?
Poor Dave.
He had to go there.
He has plenty.
I don't want your family to be about scars or anything, but I've known you for a few years.
I have a few after 15 different surgeries, so I got a few. Some longer than others, but hey, we won't discuss that. Yeah. For me, you can look at scars differently. You can look at scars and think of all the pain that was caused from the wound, from the incident that caused the wound. Mm-hmm. But you can also, the moment. Exactly, yeah. and what you were going through and what happened and so on and so forth. But also, when I look at a scar, it reminds me I'm still going. By the help of God. Yeah. Yep. I could have. It could have been a lot worse, as Pastor Tess just noted. It could have cost you something really, horrific. But at least you're still in the fight. You're still in the game. You're still moving by the grace of God and His strength and His healing virtue. And so don't stop now. Things can always get worse. Things can always turn upside down. We understand that life is life. But as long as we keep Him first, I think that was the interesting thing, and I know we'll talk about that here in a moment, but as long as we keep trusting in Him and believing that He has us, then we're going to be okay. We can make it through it. It's just holding on to that faith.
Those fragments are pivotal because I believe, the Bible doesn't say what they did with those baskets.
Right.
It doesn't say. I believe each disciple, there was 12, so one for each disciple. I believe they kept onto those. They used those for supply for themselves that evening. I believe they even took them to the boats because they went from that moment to the boats to go over the Sea of Galilee. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens next is a storm comes up, right? I think Peter could see what God had already done in the boat with him, which made him even more apt to say, if that's you, call me out there to you. I'll walk on water with you. He could remember the moments. Mm-hmm. I think the scars, in your case, we mentioned this. You said, okay, it's the nightmare of the moment or the deliverance that God brought in your life. Mm-hmm. Because we're all going to have something, right? And I know that you probably may not talk about your particular scars, but you've got one about that long.
Oh, I have plenty of scars.
Plenty of them.
Dave and I.
But that one is this long is about how God delivered you from kidney cancer.
Precisely.
And so to know that fragment is there, that miracle is there.
Well, that scar, was access for redemption of my health. But that scar also reminded me that there are people that are willing to pray for you. Mm-hmm. Because when we were walking through that time in our life, we had people from all sorts, people we had never even, spoken to before that would stop us in the grocery store. We're praying for you. God's going to take care of this. Yeah. I didn't even know that they believed in God, much less that they would take the time to pray for me. So I think scars reveal, the greater picture, if you will, of God's children and God's kingdom, about how we're supposed to speak life into one another. Yeah.
Well, Jesus told him, he said, gather up the fragments that remain so that nothing will be lost.
And for me, when you just said that right there, gather up, I think that's keep the reminder close to you at all times. Mm-hmm. Because if you're not careful, you continue to always concentrate upon the negative.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right.
And you forget about the positive. Mm-hmm. And so you get caught up in those moments. But if you keep those it's like David, David took the head of Goliath. He took it back in the back. He
Yeah,
took
he
it back.
did,
For
yeah.
You have to have
Big
a
piece of
testimony.
granite.
Yeah,
Fragment.
big
Big
fragment.
fragment.
You have to have a testimony. You have to have something that reminds you, because again, life is tough and you never know what tomorrow holds. And sometimes you have to look back and say, hey, wait a minute, God got me through that. Here's the proof. I love what you did in the sermon yesterday. You kept carrying the basket around with you.
Yeah,
You know, and sometimes it may become monotonous, and people may say, "Why you still got that basket? Why are you still talking about what God did for you yesterday?" Because I need Him to do the same thing today, or I may need, and I've got to keep it fresh in my mind that God is still able. He's still a deliverer. He's still a healer. He's still whatever I need Him to be. So it just reminds me.
Fragments. It just means so much when you look at them, and it brings you peace.
Yeah.
It brings you joy, and it also brings me to a point where God don't owe me nothing.
Yeah.
He done gave me my life. You know, He don't owe me jack,
Yeah.
you know, and it helps me to stay level headed and saying, hey, this happened. It's all right. Keep rolling, because I know my God is greater.
Yeah.
You know, and those fragments reveal the things that He already done in our life that we didn't realize that was a fragment.
Yeah.
And that makes any sense. Because some people are like, Lord, reveal yourself to me. And then when you think God finally reveals Himself, but then when you finally see this revelation, you look back on your life like, hey, He can be showing Himself right here, right here,
Exactly.
right here.
Exactly.
It keeps you in peace. It keeps you not wanting and motivates you that God is there.
Keeps you grounded.
Yeah, and you brought that forth when you preached the other day about this, about how many times you went back to the fragments you brought back from Israel.
Yes.
I mean, who knew that 2020 was going to be what it was?
Yeah, we was there in 2019.
Yeah.
So, and we were handed, and that's another whole. We'll save it for the next podcast, as a matter of fact, because it's such a powerful reminder of God's continual blessing in our life. And so I want to remind you of that. So we'll be back here for that. Don't miss that story. It's a great story. But I want to go back to, you said something about King David and Goliath's head. Mm-hmm. And I can't help myself. I got to tell you something that is interesting that you might enjoy. And that is this. There are many theologians that believe that whenever David took the head of Goliath, that they took it after a period of time of being seen, and it was buried. It was buried because it had to be buried at some point in time. And when it was buried at a place called the place of the skull. Then the place of the skull is also mentioned a second time upon the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And so not only did the mountainside look like a skull, but that was also the location of David's greatest victory, the burial of David's greatest enemy, skull of Goliath. And some believe that whenever that cross dropped into the ground, it landed on top of that skull. One more victory over the thing that tried to destroy the Israelites. I mean, that's just cool to hear that, the concept of all nothing that God does is left undone or unfinished. It is really quite staggering how every step He puts out there, a victory today is celebrated 10 years later or 50 years later or used again to complete the work. It's just staggering how that moment was about.
Well, even when you think about, Jesus came from the lineage of David, correct?
Right, exactly.
You know?
So then you brought the next point up. That was beautiful. So that's how that plays out, is the lineage of King David steps on the skull again. And it is just a powerful reminder that no matter what the enemy brings against your life, you will come out victorious, and don't forget your fragments. So it's okay to have some scars, have some memories, put them in a basket, keep them nearby, whatever you got to do, because God's going to take those moments to inspire you to the next level He wants you to take you in. Just trust in what He's doing. Hey, we love you guys. Don't miss out. Make sure you download the church app. I know you see this on Facebook and Instagram as well, but download the church app, Central Triad Church, your app store. Get it, download it. We love you guys. We'll see you soon.
Deuces.